Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade. Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my content, and welcome to Football Coach College Dynasty. So, this video is going to be more of a tips and tricks? More of an explanation type video to some concepts within college, or Football Coach College Dynasty. There is some confusion about what some things mean and what is a good recruit, what's not a good recruit, etc., etc. So I'm going to try to break down the mystery of potential, gems, 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, etc. so that you can understand it in a more, a way that's not confusing you, because I can see how some of these things could definitely confuse a person if they're coming into this game for the first time. So with that being said, we're gonna jump in here. I'm currently on one of my saves. I'm playing as Marshall. I think it's like season 2. It's rather early on. I've gone through and assigned training for the team, but I haven't actually continued on to assign that training yet. And I guess we'll look at what I've trained, why I've trained. Maybe that can help you. So Cade Carpenter's a senior. I don't tend to like to attempt to train seniors that much, especially when they have low potential. This potential matters, but it doesn't matter in the way that you think it matters. For the purposes of training, your A potential guys are going to be easier to train. This would be far easier to explain if I was actually able to assign the training. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come back to the training portion of this. We're going to come back to the what is potential portion of this. Let's just move into doing some recruiting. Alright, a lot of people when they get to this stage, they shut down. They're like, what do I do? How do I do this? I'm confused, etc. And it can be very daunting, right? You look at this and you're seeing very low, very low, very low, and 5-star. Well, I'm Marshall, right? Marshall is not a very high prestige team. I'm not going to be vying for the most prestigious and well-known recruits in the country. The 5-star recruits, aka the blue chip recruits, the guys who are playing in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, the biggest cities in the country have the biggest schools in the country, and the biggest high schools in the country have the most people that they can choose from to put together on their football team. So big city football teams have better quality athletes across the board because there's far more people to choose from to reach that quality level. And when you excel at that quality level, when you're the best of the highest quality football teams, well, you're definitely a good player. You're rock solid. You're a 5-star recruit. You're a blue chip recruit. You have excelled among the very best in the country, high school wise. But that doesn't necessarily mean you are the best high school athlete. So for example, Kevin McFarland here is currently ranked as the #1 blue chip player in the country right now. This wide receiver is 84 overall. This is an estimation. I haven't scouted him. If I scouted him, that would change things. Up or down, I don't know. I'm not going to waste my scouts on this guy. But this is what the experts have him pegged as the best of the best. However, this junior college player is technically better than him, but he's a junior college player. So this is a freshman. This is a junior for all intents and purposes. You recruit this guy, you're getting a junior, so you're getting 2 years out of him. You recruit this guy, you're getting a freshman. You're getting 4 years out of him. In 4 years, that 84 could climb infinitely higher than the 87 can climb in 2 years. So honestly, this is the far better player because you're getting 4 years out of him. So that's something to understand about these junior college players, is that they start off as juniors. They don't start off as freshmen. Don't fall into the trap of thinking these guys are great to recruit. I mean, they are great to recruit if you can get them this good. If you get a junior coming onto the squad that's already at 87 overall and you're Marshall, well, that's a player that's going straight into the starting lineup and is going to be a star in the conference right off the bat. So, you know, that's a win. You didn't have to train him to get there, but he's going to give you 2 good years. So there is a place to recruit junior college level guys, but I try to avoid them because as Marshall, for instance, I'm not able to recruit 5-star players. They're just not on the board for me. I shouldn't even attempt it. I would just be wasting my attempts. These schools have far stronger recruitment capacity than I do at Marshall. But at Marshall, I'm a big fish in a small pond, where like Ohio State is a big fish in a big pond. So let's move on to me being a big fish in a small pond. So if I sort everybody by, say, leader only, and I pull out the junior college guys because I don't really like, well, so this safety is starting off pretty high at 78. 78 overall, that as a safety is almost starting. As a junior, if he is actually 78, he could go, if we look at our depth chart here, and we look at our safeties, he would be fitting in right here as a junior, right behind Frank Berger. So if we got him, this senior leaving here, Jared Sylvester, he would probably be number 3 in our depth chart next year if we actually were able to land him. That's not bad. However, I definitely prefer freshmen because freshmen have more room to train. But he would be a junior college player I might think about actually going after. So let's go back to what we were doing. Alright, so I want to, again, we're going to sort by, we're in the lead. These guys want to come to Marshall. Marshall is their school of choice. And I have a fair number of people to choose from that I'm not going to have to put as much effort into getting these guys because they want to go to Marshall. Now, for all intents and purposes, if we're looking here, we've got like a quarterback and a quarterback. I don't necessarily need a bunch of quarterbacks every year, but it's interesting to know if those quarterbacks are possibly superstars. So what I like to do in this situation is I will sort all positions by leader only. This brings up all the people who strongly want to go to Marshall. I then skip the junior college guys, or I oftentimes just turn them right off here so that they don't even appear. And then I just wholesale target them all. This doesn't necessarily mean these are the guys I'm actually going to want to target, but they could be, because they could be better than what they are currently showing as. Especially the lower end. The 60 through 59 area down here, this is where we're going to find most of our gems. But don't get too hyped on gems. Gems are simply a player who you find is far better than what the experts have rated him as. You'll notice that there's an overall and a number within, say, cornerbacks or QBs or offensive linemen. So this offensive lineman, Hayden Hall here, is the 1,994th overall pick. That means there's almost 2,000 people the experts say you should choose before him. And of the offensive linemen, he's the 343rd offensive lineman you should choose, according to the experts. Now, in actuality, he could be worse than 343, or he could be better than 343. If he is significantly better than 343, say he's actually like 280 or 290, then he will be a gem. And you'll see him show up with a gem marker, and you'll see potential. Well, potential doesn't matter here. You'll see that his overall will go up. Gems don't necessarily have to have A potential. They could have A, B, C, D, or F potential, because potential is a different thing that we'll get to later on. Okay, so now I've picked these. I've got 20 recruits already. These are basically the guys I know will come to my school, so I don't have to work hard to get them. They're kind of like my fallback option, right? But they're likely probably not the absolute best recruits. Not that I can get the absolute best recruits, but I can fight to get some somewhat better recruits. So if I sort by top 3, these are people that I'll have to work a little bit harder on. And I will want to exclude already targeted recruits. That'll take out the guys that really want to come to Marshall. So I've got 4 pages of these guys I've got to work a little bit harder on. Now what I tend to do is I'll tend to look at what are my needs. I need 5 defensive linemen. I've already got 5 defensive linemen targeted with the people who want to come to Marshall, so that's pretty good. I need 3 offensive linemen. I've already got 5 targeted. Alright, it's looking like my needs are being met by the fallback guys, the guys that want to come to Marshall already, straight out the gate. So I can kind of decide here that what do I need squad level? Do I need to look for a really good QB at this point in time? Do I need a really good running back because my running back core sucks? What area am I currently lacking? And I know that I'm currently lacking in running backs. I'm building Marshall to be a squad that's a good running squad. I've got run blocking 83, run blocking 104, run blocking 97, run blocking 82, run blocking 85. I've got a pretty studly offensive line here for the purposes of run blocking. Well, actually, I've got a pretty studly offensive line for any purpose right now. This is a pretty good offensive line, but I don't have the running backs to match. Cade Carpenter here is a senior, and he's rather lackluster. Brendan Hess, this redshirt freshman, he could turn into a very competent fullback. He has the strength. He's got some blocking already in there. He's not a horrible route runner. He's not a horrible run blocking. I can train catching, route running, and run blocking up on this guy, and he all of a sudden becomes a fullback. A fullback and a short yardage back. Maybe even a third down back. He could become a very serviceable running back with a little bit of training. And he's young enough as a freshman that I'm going to get a lot of work out of him going in the future. And because he has a potential, he's going to be easier to train because I'm going to have a better chance at getting far larger breakthroughs on the things I train. So Brandon Hess, he's kind of the only guy I have to work with right now. Cade Carpenter kind of sucks, and he's a senior. He's not getting me anywhere. I mean, he's good enough, right? He's serviceable. He's got 92 ball security, so he's not going to fumble. He's got 97 speed, so he's fast, and he's got good evasion. So, but he has low ball carrier vision. As an every down back, he's okay, but he's not going to make the plays all by himself. The offensive line I have can make this guy really look like he's far better than he actually is, because he can take that 97 speed, run through that giant offensive line hole that the offensive line created, and he can just book it because I've got such a strong offensive line. And so Cade Carpenter will be able to do for me this year, but I would rather have a stud there than a guy who's just fits the bill. So going back to recruiting. So I'm gonna go back to all recruits, and I'm going to sort by position running back. I'm gonna turn all these guys off. I'm gonna get rid of I'll leave the junior college in there. There might be a junior college guy I want to go with. And I'm going to sort by top 5. Top 5 is hard to pull off. If I'm on the bottom of the top 5, I might really have to work to land that fish. And then we're going to sort this, instead of by recruit rating, we're going to go by overall. And you're going to see that a 66 overall 3-star is what I kind of have to work with here. And there's already 2 of the already targeted guys in this group. So there's only 5 extra people that this is going to target. And those 5 extra people are not technically all that great. But I'm Marshall, and this is honestly the predicament I'm in. I am a low prestige team. This is what I have to work with. So I will take Mr. Arturo Morris here, and I'll take Emilio Hines and Carlos Lang. Heck, I'll take them all. Doesn't necessarily mean that I am going to actively pursue all of them. It just means that initially I want to get a look at them to see which of them I'm actually going to pursue. Okay, so running back as a position I want to shore up, so that's why I'm putting a bit extra effort into running back. Defensive line and offensive line are typically your they always need a lot of bodies. So I'm going to go to those positions next. You always need a lot of these bodies here. Oh, actually I have no linebackers, which is another position that you often need lots of bodies, especially when you're playing a 3-4 like I am. So you have 4 linebackers on the field compared to 3 defensive linemen. you have more linebackers on the field than any other position in the defense. So defensively, you need to have more linebackers in reserve than any other category on your squad if you're playing a 3-4. If you're playing a 4-3, that's actually the reverse. You're going to want to have a lot more defensive linemen than linebackers. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. That assumes that you have basic football knowledge. Okay, so we're sorting by these positions. Let's get rid of the junior college guys. Not interested in them. And we are sorting by overall already. If I take too many of these guys, I'm going to really bog down my... So 1, 2... How many defensive linemen are we targeting now? 7. We'll go with 3. So 8 of 5. Okay, linebackers. We need some linebackers. Here's the first offensive lineman. This one I'm 400 behind where I'm only 100 behind. They're potentially the same, 3-star, 63 overall. And I am probably happy with 4. I only get to work with 40 at any one time. I can change these out, but these are the initial 40 I'm going to start with. And they may be the only guys I end up scouting, these 40, depending on how good they turn out. They could turn out to be real crap, and I might get rid of all of them, and then I need to come in and choose some more. Or I could have gotten lucky with who I chose, and it will turn out okay. We'll see. We're going to get there. You're going to understand what I'm talking about here shortly. Okay, we need a few more offensive line. Probably 2 more offensive line to choose from. So that'd be you and you. You're going to notice I'm not using my scouts here. I don't use my scouts on potential targets. I use my scouts on the guys I have targeted to figure out if they're any good or not, and then I kick them to the curb and I grab a new batch. Some people would scout here and then target them after they've scouted. That's a viable way of doing it, just not the way I'm doing it. Okay, so I've got 8 defensive linemen, 8 offensive linemen. Another group that I definitely probably need more bodies in: wide receivers. Yeah, we'll grab a couple of wideouts. Okay, you're going to notice here, this is another thing I want to point out, is wide receivers tend to always start off naturally higher overall than, say, offensive linemen. Offensive linemen usually start off in like the 50s and 60s, and wide receivers tend to start off in the high 60s going into the 70s. That's going to be something you're going to want to remember for later in this episode when I talk to you about potential. Okay, Ryan Kirby will target you. Hopkins will target you. And Frank will target you. So that gets us up to 5 wide receivers. Supposedly we need a kicker. I don't think we do. How many offense do we have compared to defense? We have 7 and 8 is 15, and 5 is 20. We have 22 offense right now compared to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 defense. Let's grab a couple more defensive players, maybe a cornerback and a safety. Nah, safety and linebacker. One safety, one linebacker. Again, top 5, excluding already targeted people. This is the highest rated overall safety currently on the board, so we'll grab him. And then you also note that safeties tend to start higher overall, like wide receivers do. Safeties and wide receivers tend to start out of the board at a higher level than offensive linemen and defensive linemen. Keep that in note. So like the top level linebacker here is 63 overall compared to the top level safeties, which are 72. That is a trend you're going to notice in this game. It's not coincidence. It's just a way that this game is designed. So we will. Nah, that's 400 behind. Do we got any comparable guys that I'm a little bit higher in the? You're only 2 points overall, but you're more likely to win. Okay, we're gonna go with that guy. So now we have all 40 targets. Now we're gonna go to my targets. This just happens to be the way I do it. You can do it however you want to, but I sort this by overall, and I go to the back page. The back page is the crud. These are the guys that I'm not, that if I get, I get, and if I don't get, I don't get. I'm not so much concerned about these guys unless there's a gem amongst them that makes them a little bit better than where they're currently showing me they are. So I'm gonna send these guys to camp. Camp is basically free scouting. I don't have to waste my scouting on them. The camp will do it for me. So I can discover if the trash here, well, they're not necessarily trash, but the players I'm not going to be actively fighting to get this lower level of my recruitment pool, if they're any good or not. So I send them off to camp to get them scouted. Then I go back up to the front page. These are the highest overall people. But you're going to notice that wide receivers and safeties are predominantly dominating this category because wide receivers and safeties generally start off higher than the other squads, which means if I throw all of my targeting onto these guys, well, I'm not going to end up getting any offensive linemen. Offensive linemen are fought over. They're hard to get. They're harder to get than most classes are. Offensive linemen typically take a little bit of effort. So I'm going to come down until I start to discover offensive linemen. And you're going to notice here's the highest rated offensive lineman of the group I've picked so far. So I'm going to target him with my OC pitch ace. This is my best offensive pitch. So this is, at this point in time, this is the best offensive lineman that I'm currently targeting that I know of. This could change in the near future. So yeah, I'm targeting this offensive lineman because I know our offensive linemen are hard to actually get. I wanted to spend special effort on running backs this time around, so let's find our highest rated running back. That's going to be Arturo Morris here. So I'm going to throw an HC pitch ace on him, and then we'll go after the wide receiver. Wide receivers are also like offensive linemen in that they get a lot of effort recruiting wise. They're fought over. You're seeing the 50 in parentheses. I have a badge that gives me 50 extra. That gives me 50 extra pitch when I'm recruiting wide receivers. So that's going to work out for me in this instance. Okay, so now I've got those wide receivers. Defensively, I'm just going to go down the board. So I'm going to skip that safety. I'm going to come down to this defensive lineman. I'm going to give him the next defensive pitch ace. I'm going to skip the rest of the defensive linemen until I get to probably the top rated linebacker or top rated cornerback in this instance. And I will throw the DC pitch ace on the corner. This is the top rated linebacker, so we'll throw the HC pitch that. And then I will work on another defensive lineman, work on the next running back, probably another offensive lineman, which is going to be Chase here. How many pitches do I have left? I have 2 pitches left. Is there a position I haven't really targeted? That I need? Targeting a wide receiver, a couple of running backs. Targeting a linebacker, defensive line, 2 defensive line actually. A corner and a safety. So at this point, when I'm having a problem deciding, I just go with the topmost guys here. Which tends to mean my squad usually ends up having more wide receivers and safeties than they need. Sometimes. We'll see. It depends on how the recruiting battle turns out. So now I have preserve actions. So preserve actions is on, meaning the next time around, all of these assignments are already going to be pre-made, unless I want to change them. And I may want to change them. But I find it's useful to have these things preset so that I don't have to recreate the wheel every single time. So now we have done recruiting, right? We did the initial part of figuring out what our targets were going to be. We targeted the people most likely to want to come to Marshall. Then we did a top 3 target. And did I do a top 5? I don't think I did a top 5 targeting. I might have done it with the running backs because I'm trying to get a good running back, but I don't have a lot of running backs to choose from because I'm Marshall and I don't have the quality recruits other people get to work with until I get my prestige level up. I'm only prestige level 4 or 5 right now, not very high. Alright, so we go back to the weekly dashboard. We've done the recruiting, we've done the practices, we've assigned this. Now I can talk to you about potential because we're going to save in advance and we're going to get to the next part of this video. So a lot of this has been kind of incoherent rambling, and this is probably the meat and potatoes of what I really wanted to cover was right here. So if you're still with me at this point in the video, congratulations. You might actually get to the what is potential and all of this other garbage. Okay, so we're going to look at quarterback Jack Poindexter here. He's my redshirt freshman. He's my quarterback of the future. I'm working to make him the future stud. He's going to be a great quarterback coming out of Marshall someday. But he's not quite there yet. But he will be, because we've got a lot of years to work on him. And he has A+ potential to work with. What does A+ potential mean? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if we perform training, what am I going to want to train on him? Probably maybe QB-IQ. Okay, here's QB-IQ. Look at the potential gain. We have 1 through 6. That is the range that we can get. If we get a breakthrough, which is 39% chance that a breakthrough could happen. If we happen to roll that breakthrough, we could get 6 points of quarterback IQ on this guy. If we don't get the breakthrough, we're going to get the minimal 1-point gain. So, do we get a breakthrough? Don't we get a breakthrough? And also, you'll notice that I have a 40% less breakthrough chance because this is my second training on this character. Now, this is the range I want you to see. Potential gain 1 through 6 quarterback IQ on an A+ quarterback. Now let's look at a D- quarterback. Quarterback IQ 2 to 5. The very first training, because of my training facilities, the very first training has a minimal of 2 instead of a minimal of 1. So this is a 1 through 5 potential gain. So you're going to notice that this is one less potential that I could gain with this quarterback compared to this quarterback. He has a range of 6. That's what potential really does, right? Let's go down here to the A+, just to show that I'm not joshing you. Quarterback IQ, 2 to 7 range. Over here, A+, this should be 2 to 7 again. Okay, this guy being 1 to 6 is because he's not on his first training. The first training, because I have level 5 training facilities, means I get a guaranteed +1 to my rolls. So if I was to, say, do a roll with QB Marshall Mashiro here, and they both were at the same stage, they both had already done a training, they would have the exact same range. It would drop down to a 1 to 6 because he's no longer getting the +1 extra training from the first training done. Okay, and then a C potential guy. Alright, let's look at this in different ways. Let's find something that has a really large range. Man coverage. We're not going to train man coverage, obviously, with a quarterback. That would be kind of a waste of time. But there's a potential gain of 2 to 10 with this D- QB. With the C- QB, what was it, man coverage? We're up to 2 to 12 instead of 2 to 10. Now with the A+ guys for man coverage, we're up to 2 to 15. So A+ is the highest side. So this is the best possible breakthrough you can get is 15 with your A+ guys, and all the way back down with the D- guy is going to get you only 10. That's what potential does. Potential changes how big your breakthrough range is. A lot of people think that the off-season development, that a A+ character is going to have better gains in the off-season than a D- character. It's just not the case. There are some factors that determine off-season gains. One of them is what position. Remember how I was telling you to remember about the wide receivers and the safeties, how they start at a higher level overall? They tend to get smaller gains in the off-season. So when you're looking at wide receivers and safeties, they'll on average usually get 2 to 3, maybe 4 points of development in the off-season. Sometimes only 1. So maybe a range of 1 to 4 is a good rough estimate of what's going to happen with a wide receiver or a safety. And it doesn't matter if he's an A+, and it doesn't matter if he's an F-. He's going to have that rough 1 to 4 for a wide receiver or safety. Offensive linemen and defensive linemen on the reverse, because they tend to start off at much lower levels, down in the 50s and low 60s, they tend to always get much larger gains. And I'm talking, instead of 1 to 4, usually it's like 3 to 6, 3 to 7-ish, unless you have a badge. So you can get badges that improve your player development for different areas. I happen to like to go after the offensive lineman development badge for my coach. I usually always take it because I believe that offensive lines are probably the most important people in your entire football team. They're the guys that you build dynasties off of. The offensive line, far and away, can make a bad squad good. Like in this example where I'm playing Marshall, I've got some pretty shitty running backs, if I have to be frankly honest. But they're going to win player. My running back is going to probably win Player of the Conference awards. He's going to be the player of the conference at the end of the year, and he is nowhere near that good. But he's going to get there because the offensive line is going to allow him to. The offensive line is going to open up holes so big that anybody could run through. Cue Dallas Cowboys and Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith was a shitty running back. Well, compared to the other elite running backs, compared to Walter Payton, compared to Tony Dorsett, compared to who was the Detroit guy that was really elusive, his name, Barry Sanders. So compared to Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, Tony Dorsett, Emmitt Smith was not in their league. But he had the luxury of the Dallas Cowboy offensive line to make him look like he was in their league. That's what an offensive line can do for you. It can allow it can allow the entire team to perform much better. Like, you have a mediocre quarterback. Not saying that Troy Aikman was a mediocre quarterback, but Troy Aikman was no Dan Marino. Troy Aikman was no Joe Montana. Troy Aikman was no John Elway. Troy Aikman was no Brett Favre. Troy Aikman had the luxury of being able to stand in the pocket for an eternity and make a decision. not taking anything away from Troy Aikman, and not taking anything away from NFL players in general. If you're made the NFL, you're a great football player. You're a superstar. But Troy Aikman is not in the same class of Hall of Fame quarterbacks as those other ones were. You know, Brett didn't always have a luxury of a great offensive line. Sometimes he did have a good offensive line. There were a few years there where Brett had the luxury of some very solid offensive linemen up in front of him. But there was a lot of times Brett didn't have the luxury of a great offensive line, and he had to improvise, which Brett was known for doing, which made him fun to watch. You know, he did some of these improvisations that no coach would ever suggest you do. And somehow he pulled them off most of the time. And sometimes they failed spectacularly. But he was fun and enjoyable to watch because he was out there playing the game like a kid. He was playing the game like he was having fun. Not like it was a job. Which is what, old John Madden used to say about Brett all the time, was that, he's out there just having fun. He's a true football player. Brett improvised. He made things work because he didn't necessarily always have the same quality of team around him to work with, but he made it happen somehow. Where am I going with this? Anyway, so I explained potential, and then I was talking about potential and off-season gains. Potential really has no bearing on off-season gains, really. It's purely for how trainable is that character. If he's a D or an F, he's just not trainable. So I've answered the potential thing. Have I talked about stars? 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars? I might have kind of skipped over that. Your 5-star players are your blue chip players. They're the guys who are playing in the biggest cities. They have the most eyes on them. They're playing against the hardest competition because they've got the hardest schools to work with. So 5-star players are generally really good because they play against the hardest competition. Where your 1, 2, and 3-star players are, your rednecks out in the country who are playing against really easy competition. They're a superstar amongst lesser caliber players. So are they really a superstar? Can they really excel as much as the superstars do in the big high schools in like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles? Questionable, hard to say. It's a crapshoot, really. So the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star recruits, they excel in their respective areas, but they're not as famous. They're not as sure of a thing, right? Overall is your most important stat. Overall is the true, this is how good that character is. An 81 is better than a 68. Regardless of if the 81's an F and the 68 is an A+. The 81F is far better than the 68 A+. All the A and F means is that the 68 A+ is easier to train. So I'm going to go through one thing of training with you to show you just kind of how I think about training, and then I'll wrap up this video. So let's perform training. I'm trying to turn Poindexter into a future star. He's a quarterback, so we've got arm strength, accuracy, and quarterback IQ that I'm worried about at this stage. And then I also worry a little bit about strength and speed. Not so much. I prefer field generals. He's a gunslinger, but I'm basically turning him into a field general. I want a guy who's smart, accurate, with a solid arm. I don't care about his mobility. I don't want him running the football. He's not going to be an option quarterback. He is going to be a quarterback that's going to throw the football to a target, that's going to manage the football team. That's what I need him to do. So quarterback IQ is the lowest thing right now, so we're going to throw it into IQ. So now we got him up to 80. Then I think I'm working on a running back right now. Yeah, I'm working on Brendan Hess. This is my redshirt freshman. I'm trying to turn him into what I consider the fullback slash receiving back. He's going to be basically blocking for Cade Carpenter. So for that purposes, I need to improve his run blocking. And if he's going to be catching the ball, I'm going to need to improve his catching. And if he's going to be running routes, I'm going to need to improve his route running. These are the things I'm going to be focusing on with Brendan Hess. But first things first, let's make him a good fullback. And I'm going to make him a good fullback first, and then I'll try to develop him into a third down back. Third down back is a guy who's going to be pass blocking and is going to be running routes and catching the football. Right now, I want him as a fullback that's going to be out leading the charge in front of Cade. So right now, I need him strong, and I need him to be a good run blocker. So we're going to worry about strength and run blocking. His run blocking is low. This is what we're going to go with. You see his training succeeded for run blocking, but no breakthrough occurred. No breakthrough occurred, we only got 1 point. If this was his first training, he would have gotten 2 points if no run blocking occurred, because, again, as I said earlier, my training level guarantees 2 base attribute gains on the first training for each player. Applies to the first training for each player. 2 base attribute gains. This was not the first, so he only gets 1 base attribute training. If a breakthrough had occurred, he would have possibly gotten a much larger chunk. Okay, wide receivers. Am I training someone here? Brian Dumas is a guy who's going to be my kick returner. And so I'm working on turning him into a kick returner. One thing that kick returners need that other running backs don't is ball carrier vision. He's got low ball carrier vision stats. He's also got low route running stats. He is my number 2 wide receiver, so I need to have him competent as a wide receiver in general before I start worrying about making him a great kick returner. So we're going to go with route running again. And there, we got a breakthrough. This was something that was important. So that still brings him up to a low 69. That is not... I would like to have him at least 75-ish as a starting wide receiver with route running capacity. But my next 2 are probably going to go back to making him a decent kick returner. So I might go back to giving him ball carrier vision with the next 2 trainings. I'm training this guy here who's got D potential. I've said not to train characters with D potential because you're getting a smaller breakthrough capacity, but I promised this guy 50 snaps. And if I'm going to be giving him 50 snaps, then yeah, I don't want him to be a completely terrible player. 62 speed is serviceable. He was a little slow, but he's okay now. 83 catching is serviceable. 77 route running is serviceable. So, yeah, at this point, I think he's serviceable. Oddly enough, I think he's more serviceable than the guy that's ahead of him. Only because he's got better route running. So I'm not going to invest another training into this guy. I think he's good enough. I think the little bit of speed I gave him made him good enough to justify his position. I'm happy with that. This guy needs to get 25 targets. I think I can pull that off from where he's at without worrying about doing anything to him. So that's my thought process here. Now we're going to skip on to the next position. Am I working on any tight ends? No. I've got some pretty bad tight ends, to be honest. There's only so many areas I can concentrate on. My offensive line is so good, I don't need to concentrate on them. I made this guy the promise that we're going to win the conference championship. I think it's highly probable we will. We are kind of a big fish in a small pond in our conference, so we have a very good possibility of accomplishing this. This was to keep him from entering the NFL draft, by the way. He wanted to go into the NFL as a junior. All right, kickers. I do tend to waste more points than I should on a kicker, but I'm going to do it again. 80-80 is... I'm happy with this as a punter. I'd like a little bit more leg, however, for kicking longer field goals. So we're going to invest in kicking power. We only got the 1 point attribute because this was the second training. Again, 2 base attributes for the first training. And again, he was a C character, so he had a limited breakthrough range anyway. But now we're up to an 80 kicking power leg. It's good enough. I'm probably not going to invest any more into him. I'm happy with an 80-87. That works for me. 80 is kind of where I like to have my kickers be. At least 80. Okay, defensive line. Am I working on any defensive linemen? It doesn't seem I am. Linebackers. Okay, I'm working on this sophomore. Probably because I promised him 40% of snaps. My defensive scheme is zone coverage aggressive, so man coverage isn't as important in my squad because my defensive coordinator is going to be calling zone coverage way more often than he's going to be calling man coverage. Yeah, it would be nice to have some man coverage ability, but really I need to be sure my guys are capable at zone coverage. And to that effect, this starter is a little lower in zone coverage than I would like him to be. So I might take his training and actually go up here and throw it into this guy. Zone coverage. So we get this is his first training, so he gets at least 2. But if we get a breakthrough, he could get as high as 7. 65 chance on the breakthrough, by the way. We did not get a breakthrough. Sucks to be us. But we did get the 2 points because we didn't get a breakthrough. But we got the extra 1 point because we have a level 7 facility. Alright. Moving on to our next cornerbacks. I'm working on this guy. He is a redshirt sophomore. I'm working on him because he's a redshirt sophomore with good potential. You notice these guys have terrible potential. F, C, C, D. This is the first guy with that's moldable in my opinion, and he's young enough that the effort should help. I like to train younger players if at all possible, and I always train people with good potential because that's the whole point of potential. Is potential should really not be called potential, it should be called trainability. That would be a much better title of that particular statistic. Trainability would solve the whole quandary of what does potential mean. Okay, so what do I want to train him for? Tackling and pursuiter is two lowest stats. I'm going to go with tackling this time around. Okay, we did get a breakthrough, so, but it wasn't a great breakthrough. It was a mediocre breakthrough. We got +3. But that did move him up the rung a little bit, so that's good. Now we're on to the safeties. We're working on Jared Sylvester here. He's a senior. I don't typically like to work on seniors. However, this particular senior is a guy I was working on when he was a junior and a sophomore. So I have a particular, well, no, this is only my second year. I was working on him when he was a junior. So I'm a little bit tied to him because I've already worked on him. And he's interesting, right? He's got amazing zone coverage, but he's got some other stats that are kind of low. He's kind of like a mismatch. He's a superstar that's lacking in a couple of abilities. So I would really like to have all of his abilities be superstarish so they complement, right? His pursuit is currently his lowest stat. That's what we worked on last time. That's what we're going to work on again. We only got a +1. That sucks. All right. But that was to be expected because the more effort you put onto one character, the less chances of getting the breakthrough you have. So, would I recommend to do things the way I'm doing it? No. You should probably divvy out your points to get the most potential out of each train that you can, because you'll have a far better chance of getting breakthroughs if you divvy it amongst many characters. But I have this funny thought process of trying to turn a couple of characters into superstars so that I can get them to the NFL. That's kind of my goal here is I want to get them drafted. Because if I can get some guys drafted out of Marshall, then my recruiting becomes a little bit easier, because that's one of the recruiting metrics is, let's say, offensive linemen. If I've had offensive linemen from Marshall make it into the NFL draft, or will make it into the NFL, then offensive linemen are going to want to come to Marshall more often than they used to. They'll be more predilected to head to Marshall because I have a habit of getting my offensive linemen into the NFL. And I'm hoping that will be the case, actually, because I have some quality offensive linemen that are NFL material. And so I think that might actually be a way for me to go with Marshall. So I have 2 HC trainings left. Why is that? Who didn't I train? I've gone through... Okay. I'm going to run through this back again. I used a run blocking instead of a strength, which means I have one that I didn't use here. Okay, so that's one of them explained. Really, Cade Carpenter, strength and speed isn't really going to change him. It's strength and speed for a quarterback isn't really. He's got 97 speed. That's entirely too fast for a quarterback. Oh wait, no, that's a running back. Okay, actually, no. He's a running back. Let's give him more strength. Excellent, we got a breakthrough. Okay, that just made him a tad bit more serviceable. And that was a good use of our thing. Where else could we get a good use out of some more strength or speed? Wide receivers always like speed. Do I have any slowish wide receivers? Do I have a young wide receiver that could use maybe tight ends? It's an interesting thought process. Could start working on a tight end. He's got 76 speed and 64 strength. This guy's a better mold to work with, I think. We're going to start working on this tight end. He's going to be a tight end of the future. We're going to give him strength this time around. +6. Excellent. So now we have assigned all of our things. So in this video, hopefully you have learned some things about recruiting, about training, about what is potential, what are stars, what a gem is. I think I've explained the concept of a gem, but we didn't actually show any gems because we didn't get to that point. How overall is the true determining factor of which character is better than the other. Overall stat is the one that really matters. The potential is just who's most trainable. And yeah, that pretty much covers these concepts I wanted to get through to a new player inside of Football Coach College Dynasty. Hopefully you find this video useful. Hopefully this rambling will help you become a better college coach or a Football Coach College Dynasty player. Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Softwareblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please smash that like button. Consider subscribing, and until the next time, all, peace.